It's time for another season of Crimson Tide football. That means it's time for Crimson Tide Kickoff, brought to you by Alpha Insurance. We're in the Peach State, opening the year for the second consecutive season. This year's opponent, Nick Saban's home state, West Virginia Mountaineers. We've got lots to cover from Atlanta. Crimson Tide Kickoff 2014 starts right now.
Crimson Tide Kickoff, presented by Alpha Insurance.
It's a lot like Christmas morning for football fans. In fact, it is Christmas morning for football fans. Football has returned. Crimson Tide Kickoff is live inside the Georgia World Congress Center at the Chick-fil-A Fan Zone. We're counting you down to kickoff between Alabama and West Virginia at 2:30 Central Time inside the Georgia Dome. And welcome in, everybody. I'm Gary Harris. It was a long off season for Alabama fans. Two tough losses to end the 2013 campaign have made for a long off season, nearly 8 months in fact. And it's finally arrived, a new season here in Atlanta at the Georgia Dome, a familiar setting to open the 2014 campaign. We've got a lot planned for the next hour. Let's take a look. We'll be breaking down the game. Alabama trying to snap that two-game losing skid. Plus, we'll welcome Barrett Sallee of BleacherReport.com to help us discuss the Tide and the Mountaineers. And we'll get a special feature from B.J. Milliken. Milliseconds. You'll want to stay tuned for that. He'll tell us a bit about it in just a second. In fact, we'll also get interactive here from the Chick-fil-A Fan Zone. And I'm joined now on the set by the producer of this show, Assistant Sports Director for WVUA-TV, B.J. Milliken. B.J., tell me all about this Milliseconds. I know it's a play on your last name.
It is. It's exciting. I promise it's not going to actually be only milliseconds. It's a little longer than that. But it's a special feature that we're going to kind of go around. We've gotten some already shot, and it's kind of giving you a little bit of a look of for Alabama fans at some stuff on the field and some stuff off the field. And this week we got a special look inside the new College Football Hall of Fame here in Atlanta, right down the road from this building. My goal each week with these segments is to kind of give you something new, something that maybe you didn't know. If it's not from something that I say, maybe you can catch one of the facts that's going to pop up throughout the video. It's good stuff, and we had a lot of fun shooting them.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Can't wait for the milliseconds to get here, I guess.
It's not very long. It's not very long. We don't have long to wait. So
thanks, BJ. We'll see you again soon. We begin this CTKO the way we begin them all, each and every Saturday, with a look at Bama headlines.
For the latest on the Crimson Tide, you don't need the newspaper. You need Bama headlines.
Alabama's starting quarterback. Blake Sims ran the offense this spring, and Jacob Coker came in during fall camp to challenge Sims for the #1 spot. Now, Nick Saban has not officially named a starter as of yet, but all indications that it'll be Blake Sims. We'll find out for sure at 2:30 Central Time, although both guys should play. We do know who we will not see on the field today for Alabama. Nick Saban announced on Wednesday that senior linebacker Trey DePriest will miss the game due to a minor NCAA infraction. He's expected to sit out only this game this afternoon, so he should be back in uniform when the Tide plays its home opener next Saturday against Florida Atlantic. Reggie Ragland and Reuben Foster expected to get the starts at inside linebacker. Nick Saban said Monday that everybody else with injury questions should be available today. That means that we could see Eddie Jackson at cornerback, and we'll likely see in the offensive line rotation potentially Dominic Jackson, Leon Brown, and then on defense, Ashawn Robinson should be good to go for Alabama on the defensive line. As for this game, a lot has been made of how last season ended for the Crimson Tide, a two-game losing streak. But Nick Saban is ready to turn the page against a West Virginia team who's hungry for a bounce-back season. They finished a dismal 4-8 last year after high expectations going into the season. For Saban and the Tide, the coach knows this year this team has a clean slate.
Mindset, preparation, determination to create an identity are probably, the real keys, for this team. So, West Virginia has, I think, a really good team coming back. Dana has done a really good job there, especially when it comes to, you know, how they've been able to play offense.
Coach Saban's body of work speaks for itself. They've been playing at a very high level here for the last 6 years. They're an outfit that's tough to beat. Our guys understand that, and look forward to the opportunity to be able to get it on Saturday.
Let's thumb through the game notes. This is the first meeting ever, a little bit surprising, between Alabama and West Virginia since the Mountaineers are now in the Big 12. Here's the Tide's record against the Big 12, and it's not a good one. Only 13 wins, 17 losses, and 2 ties. And later on, we'll hear from Nick Saban about his fondness for West Virginia football growing up in that state. We're inside right now, but so many of you are getting ready for outdoor activities in preparation for the game at 2:30. Let's check in on the latest weather conditions and what they'll be like later on today with our own Peter Crank. He's back in the comfort of Bryant-Denny Stadium. Pete.
Yes, that's right. We are dealing with warm conditions across the entire southeast this morning. Here in Tuscaloosa, if you're still here, 85. Down as you head towards Auburn and Montgomery, 88, and then back over in Atlanta, we are sitting at 84 degrees. And for the most part, travel between here and Atlanta is going well as of right now. But when you factor in some rain that is on its way off to our west, you can see that line basically along the Mississippi River down to Louisiana, and that's moving north and west slowly. So for us here in Tuscaloosa, we're going to be seeing increasing clouds and storms throughout the day, and even a couple storms may make it all the way to Atlanta as well. You can see there with the football, that's where Atlanta is. For here in Tuscaloosa, we are going to be seeing some warm conditions around 89 degrees today. That's what we'll top out at with those scattered storms and mostly cloudy skies. For Atlanta, outdoors during the tailgate, we're going to stay partly cloudy to mostly cloudy for the beginning of the game, and then we'll see those increasing clouds and a couple of storms as well throughout the day. Outside of the Georgia Dome, obviously inside the Georgia Dome, things are going to be pretty nice with that air conditioning.
All right, thanks, Pete. It's definitely a hot one outside on this Saturday. Well, coming up on CTKO, we've got a lot more ground to cover. In fact, we're just getting cranked up. Next, we'll continue to break down the Crimson Tide and the Mountaineers. And don't forget, as you're watching, we want your feedback and interaction. If you have a question, comment, or anything to say, log on to Twitter or Facebook using the hashtag CTKO and let your voice be heard. Get connected with CTKO this season. We continue next with our special guest, Barrett Sallee of BleacherReport.com. How does he see today's game shaping up in the Dome? He's right with us after the break. We are having some fun here at the Chick-fil-A Fan Zone inside the Georgia World Congress Center. Crimson Tide Kickoff brought to you by Alpha Insurance continues, and it is going to be a special day of football. It's back. That's the good news. And our guest now is the lead writer from BleacherReport.com, Barrett Sallee. Thanks for joining us, Barrett.
My pleasure, Gary. Thanks for having me.
You know, you wait all year, it seems like, and then once football season gets here, it just flies by. But we won't worry about that right now. We're just getting started.
Yeah, we are, and some really good games already. You know, South Carolina, Texas A&M on Thursday night, and then the one that just wrapped up, Penn State, UCF out there in Dublin. So it's been a lot of fun so far, and hopefully that continues throughout the season.
I've been sitting over here. Who wound up winning, Penn State and UCF?
Penn State on a last-second field goal.
They did get down
UCF scored with about a minute and a half left, and Penn State drove down and scored or kicked a field goal. Fitting. A game in Europe ends on a kick.
Yeah, that's right. How about that? Well, Alabama fans are certainly hoping that this game between the Tide and the Mountaineers doesn't come down to a field goal regardless of the outcome. Let's talk about this matchup. Clearly on paper, Alabama's a better football team. Las Vegas thinks so. The point spread's huge for a game of this magnitude. But West Virginia last year, they went in with high expectations. They finished 4-8. It got away from them. They were bad on defense. Their offense not anything like Dana Holgorsen expects it to run. Let's start with West Virginia. What do they need to do to be competitive today against Alabama?
Well, I think they need to figure out how to play defense. They need to figure out how to win the battle at the line of scrimmage, and against a team like Alabama that is built like an elite SEC team up front. That's going to be hard. Alabama still obviously has some questions along the offensive line, but I don't know if that matters. You know, West Virginia just is completely undermanned. They're not quick to the football defensively, and ultimately I think that's what's going to cost West Virginia this game, just because they don't have the bodies. If they can figure out how to get pressure on the quarterback, whoever the quarterback is for Alabama, then maybe they have a puncher's chance, because let's be honest, neither of these quarterbacks, Jake Coker or Blake Sims, are really that experienced. They've never really been in this setting before, so you don't know how they're going to handle it. And so if West Virginia can figure out a way to do that, then maybe they have a puncher's chance. But, I mean, I don't think there's anything to suggest that they can even get to that point right now.
We're going to talk more about those Alabama quarterbacks in just a moment, but let's talk about Clint Trickett. Now, he can sling it a little bit.
Yeah.
If they're able to give him some time, and pass rush has been a concern or lack thereof for Alabama, although I think they feel a lot better about their defensive front. As you said, they're probably going to give up some points.
Right.
They probably need a shootout to have a chance. Offensively, how do they get back to maybe where they were a couple years ago with Geno Smith?
Well, they need to spread it around. They've got some weapons. They've got some running backs led by Russell Shell, who I think can be competitive. They can give Alabama some fits, and you've seen Alabama struggle with some teams at times that sort of spread it all around and make their linebackers run side to side. But I think Alabama, what they've been doing the last few years recruiting-wise, they've got guys that, if it's not working with the frontline guys, they can bring in a guy like Rashaan Evans, who's an undersized linebacker that's more of a fast twitch guy. Maybe he plays more of an impact. Sean Dion Hamilton, who probably will get some more playing time today because of Trey DePriest. Those kind of guys, I think, fit to what are better for what West Virginia wants to do. But, again, you mentioned the pass rush. Alabama's problems are in the secondary. I think their front seven is just fine. And I think Clint Trickett really needs Shell and some of those running backs to take some pressure off of him, because I don't know if West Virginia's line can hold up to Alabama's front seven. Even though Alabama's front seven is a little inexperienced, I think the upside is just too much.
Of course, the pass rush could really help that back end for Alabama.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. They've brought in some really big physical corners, but they're going to start Silv and Cyrus Jones, who are both smallish, quick guys. Cyrus Jones had problems last year. Bradley Sills had a really good camp, but some inexperience and in Silv and a guy in Cyrus Jones who got rung up a little bit last year.
Yeah, and that's been a problem. I mean, Alabama had the second best pass defense in the SEC last year. That was not the second best pass defense in the SEC. Right. I think that was more due to teams that really didn't throw the ball very well that they played against. So they need those guys to step up. Ultimately the future is Tony Brown and Marlon Humphrey. But in a game like this, when you're playing a team that knows what it's doing through the air, you sort of want to have some veterans, even if their top end potential really isn't there at this point. It's a lot to ask true freshmen to come in and start against a team like West Virginia that, they've got problems, but they can still throw it around the field. And Dana Holgorsen is going to find ways to test those cornerbacks, because he knows that's a weak spot as well.
We touched on Trey DePriest briefly. I mean, Alabama, he's been banged up anyway, so they've been preparing other inside linebackers, but still Ragland and Reuben Foster, neither one have played a lot of football.
No, they haven't. Ragland is a guy I like a lot. Reggie Ragland, I think, is very, very underrated. Reuben Foster, he's sort of been on the field, off the field. He's been battling that neck injury, seems like, for a couple neck injuries. But, obviously everyone saw his highlight film from high school. He's just an absolute missile back there. So, luckily for Alabama, they do have a guy like Reuben Foster who's sort of cross-trained at both of those middle linebacker positions. And then, a guy like Sean Dion Hamilton, young guy, but, I think they like his upside. And then Lee, sort of can play everywhere, at all those linebacker spots. So there is some depth. And honestly, I think Alabama can sort of use this as a blessing in disguise, because you're going to need those guys to know what they're doing. And now they're going to be doing it, against a West Virginia team in the Georgia Dome in a pretty big game, at least by opening week standards. So they'll have that experience not only for this year, but moving forward once they do ascend into that, more of a big responsibility as they go on.
All right, we're getting short on time, but I do want to offensively cover the fact that we know Alabama's got running backs. We know they've got receivers. They've got tight ends. Offensive line, a little bit of a question mark, but still the quarterbacks are what everybody's watching. We expect Sims to start. Yeah. Do you think both will play, and is there any way to have any kind of barometer on how they'll play?
I don't think you can have a barometer at all. I mean, I think everyone sort of knows what Blake Sims is. He's a dual threat kid. He's been, good at times, and the reports have been great. But, I think you have to, if you're Nick Saban, you can't run the risk of dividing your locker room. Sims has those relationships built up. So I think it has to be clear, not just to Saban and the coaching staff and the players, but almost everybody around that watches that program to be, otherwise you run the risk of dividing the locker room. So I think it's going to be Sims. I think Coker gets to play, and we'll see. I don't really know how you can make a judgment either way on who the number one guy is, because Sims hasn't played that much, and Coker's the biggest mystery in all of college football at this point.
I know people on BleacherReport.com are ready to read you, but you've got a quick prediction for us
Yeah, you know, I say Alabama wins 42-14. You know, it's going to be a sloppy game. I almost think it's going to be sloppy on purpose. I think when both quarterbacks are in, maybe Kiffin sort of, you know, throws some stuff at them to see what sticks and what they don't excel at. And I think that will ultimately be what decides, you know, who wins that job moving forward. So I think it's going to be a little sluggish because of that. And then, you know, Alabama can always just turn it around and hand it off, and they'll be able to that'll be just fine. So it's going to be sluggish, but that's okay. I think that's probably by design.
Thanks, Barrett.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, Barrett Salih from the Bleacher Report giving us some great insight. Next on CTKO, we'll talk offense. How will the Tide's attack look under new offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin? That's coming up.
And coming up next on Crimson Tide Kickoff, we're here at the new College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. Harder to get into than Fort Knox. 2 out of every 100,000 players to ever play the game of college football end up in here, and we're giving you the tour when we come back.
From Atlanta, Georgia, and the Chick-fil-A fan zone inside the Georgia World Congress Center. It's happening. Football is back. We're with you. Stay with us. More CTKO after this. You know, Atlanta, Georgia is one of the busiest cities in the United States of America and home to 3 big football games this weekend. You know, we think the Georgia Dome is an incredible facility, but it soon will go the way of the dinosaur as Atlanta is building a brand new Falcon Stadium that will run $950 million. It's scheduled to be ready for opening in 2017. Well, that's just one of the new buildings in this city. Another one opened its doors just down the street from where we're at. It's the College Football Hall of Fame moving to Atlanta from South Bend, Indiana. Our BJ Milliken got a tour of the facility days before it opened and has this report in the first installment of Milliseconds.
Yeah, we're here at the new College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. They had moved it from South Bend, Indiana. It's now here in this brand new facility behind me. 1 million visitors expected a year, and we were able to get a little exclusive tour. The first thing you see when you walk in is this gigantic wall of helmets. 768.
Welcome to the College Football Hall of Fame.
All right, we've got some Alabama fans here.
Football pride, Crimson Tide, roll Tide, roll Tide.
So the first thing we see when we come upstairs is a giant touchscreen interactive video wall. So you can really spend a lot of time probably right here at this board if you're a big college football fan, because lots of stuff on here, lots of good video to look at. So this is a pretty cool feature. Who says this interactive stuff is just for kids, right?
Exactly.
I must say that is a work of art. As you can see, a lot of interactive exhibits and things here at the College Football Hall of Fame. What are we demonstrating today?
I like the food fling, personally.
Okay, show us the food.
Okay, so you just click on the food and you have to make it reach all the way to the fans. Yeah.
Useful skills.
Useful skills, exactly.
So this is something that really adults and kids can kind of come through and have a lot of fun with.
Definitely. I personally like it, and I'm 23, so.
We have 15 different stadiums you can select from.
Could I get you to select Bryant-Denny Stadium?
We don't have them yet.
No Bryant-Denny Stadium.
We've got a lot of good teams like Georgia.
Whoa. Wait, say that again?
Georgia.
No. This is the first.
Good.
Good teams like Georgia. Here with Mr. College Football himself, Tony Barnhart.
We knew it was going to be good, but it surpasses even my wildest expectations.
All right, well, Alabama goes to LSU this year, so we're going to kind of give you a preview of what you're going to see here at the College Football Hall of Fame. You can do that, right?
Yes, definitely. Okay, we're going to run on the field with the Tigers.
Coach Les, he's already has his grass smoothie. All right, here with Danny Warfel.
This is crazy. This is, you know, your great-grandparents would love being here, and your 5-year-old kids would love being here. It's just amazing.
The tastiest Bermuda grass on the planet, according to Les Miles.
I've actually had a taste of it myself.
And how was it?
It wasn't too bad.
Yeah?
I had to try it when I was down there.
It tastes a little like grass?
First try of grass, so hopefully we'll beat Bama this year.
No, let's cut. You know, this is my job, so I better be good at this part. Come on, let's see how I do. There goes Davis. He's going to run it all the way back. Oh, are there flags anywhere? Any flags? Can I get a flag? Well, get the fans off the field. We're going overtime. Just trying to change history, guys. Hey, if you have an idea for milliseconds, please send me an email, bjmilliken@wvuatv.com. We'd love to hear your feedback on these pieces, and thanks especially to the Bryant Museum for sponsoring Milliseconds. I'm excited to show you guys a lot more. Now, next week, we're going to bring you the story of an Alabama football artist who is shining a little bit different light on Alabama football players. And a little later in this show, you get double milliseconds. We went looking for a good spot to eat in Atlanta, and we found a good one. So that's coming up here in a little bit. Gary?
Thank you, BJ. I had no doubt that between you and Bradley Whittington, y'all would find a good place to eat in Atlanta. Just happy that you verified what I already knew. And also, speaking of the College Football Hall of Fame, awesome that the late, great Derek Thomas just inducted into the College Football Hall this year. Well, let's continue our preview of the game by taking a closer look at the Crimson Tide offense. It's a unit that will look much different than it has the past 2 years. That's because Lane Kiffin is now in charge, and he'll be on the field calling the game. That's the first time that's happened under Nick Saban at Alabama. Both McElwain and Nussmeier called the game from the press box. Nick Saban thinks that they've had a good fall camp on offense. And talking about the quarterback situation, he believes the competition has helped both Sims and Coker.
Well, and I was going to look at the glass half full on that one, because you could say that both guys are playing really, really well, and it's hard to choose. All right, so you could really, say that both those things are, factors. But I do think competition is something that helps all players at any position. You'd like to have a guy that sort of steps forward and takes the leadership role and game management part of it that makes all the other players on offense feel comfortable in what they're expected to do.
And check out these numbers. Alabama, when rushing for at least 140 yards, they're incredible. Since 2008, Alabama 60-1. That's impressive. It's also very important to maintain the same type of balance that the Tide achieved last year. And turnovers, always important. And Alabama leads the nation in fewest turnovers since 2009. Lots more coming up from Atlanta. Coming up in just a bit, we'll take you around the SEC. A lot of high-profile games on this opening week in the conference. Also, don't forget you can find us on social media on Twitter and Facebook with the hashtag CTKO. Make sure if you have a question or comment, let us know. We'll be checking on it throughout the show. Stay with us. A closer look at the Alabama defense as they try and replace some leadership. Much more CTKO from Atlanta live after this break.
Roll Tide. West Virginia sings Country Road after the game. Which song will we hear when the clock strikes 0 at the Georgia Dome tomorrow?
John Denver, Country Roads, 31-28, West Virginia.
Shocker.
Country roads, take me home.
The song that we keep hearing is Country Road. They play that after their wins. But we play another song.
Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer. Give it hell, Alabama. Roll, Tide, roll. Roll, baby, roll.
Now, you guys do know that there's a song Alabama plays after they win, too, right? Are you familiar? No. Okay. Well, hopefully I won't spoil the ending. Maybe I'll hear it tomorrow.
Country roads, take me home to the place.
All right, we heard Country Road until my ears were bleeding, but we got a real song in Alabama, don't we?
Yeah.
All right, let's kick it off.
Sweet home Alabama.
Roll Tide, roll.
Sweet home Alabama.
Alabama fans always travel well, especially to Atlanta, and Crimson Tide fans are hoping that Bama brings with it a typical Nick Saban defense. If that's the case, they're going to be pretty salty. Now, the Tide defense, though, has been scrutinized heavily in this offseason by the pundits out there. The no-huddle, hurry-up offense seems to be the Achilles heel for Alabama's defense. And West Virginia is expected to use tempo and go fast. But if the Tide is going to have success against the Mountaineers, it's the guys up front that will have to control the line of scrimmage. Nick Saban says that's an area that's going to be improved.
Up front, defensive line-wise, we're a lot better than what we were last year. I think we have more guys that have more experience, that are more ready to play. I think we're a little more athletic, up front. We're a little thin at linebacker. That's not a place that you like to sort of rotate people, but we've thought about, doing that a little bit in these kinds of games.
It's been one of the toughest defenses to score against in the country. As a matter of fact, it's been the toughest. Alabama's only surrendered 91 touchdowns since 2009, a number that's 36 less than the next closest team. That's amazing. Well, it's time to take a look at this week's Player Spotlight. To do that, let's toss it back over to BJ.
That's right, Gary. He's missing his other half this season, but Ari Kwanjo is not using that as a reason to fade into obscurity. With more on Alabama's senior Ari Kwanjo on the offensive line, here's Scott Braswell.
He's an easy guy to spot. Standing at 6'5" and weighing over 300 pounds, Ari Kwanjo stands tall for a Tide offensive line that enters the 2014 season with uncertainties. Kwanjo, a fifth-year senior, views it as his time to lead.
Obviously, my roles increased a little bit as far as being a leader for the team. I was still a senior in a way last year, so I had a leadership role, but I'd say definitely my leadership role this year has increased.
One of his roles is mentoring true freshman left tackle Cam Robinson, who will make his first career start today against West Virginia. Ari had advice for the talented Louisiana product.
I'd tell him that, we've been working hard since spring and before that even to get ready for this moment. He's worked hard to be where he is.
Kwanjo has played on some of the biggest stages in college football. That aside, the big man still gets butterflies before hitting the field.
I get anxious. I get anxious for the first play and for things like that. I want to get into it. I want to forget everything and just, play the game.
As Alabama prepares for a run at the national championship, you can bet the Tide will rely on veterans like Ari Kwanjo to get the job done. For Crimson Tide Kickoff, Scott Braswell, WVUA Sports.
Now here's an interesting stat the Tide hopes to continue this season. Every year since 2010, Alabama's yards per carry has actually gone up. It was almost 6 yards a carry last season. Now the line was a sore spot in last year's opener here at the Dome. A lot of youth and a lot of inexperience could maybe spell trouble this year, but hopefully they won't be leaky this year like they were last year. Gary?
Thank you so much, BJ. And boy, we are having some fun here in Atlanta. Stay with us. Crimson Tide Kickoff, much more to come. A little bit later on, we'll be taking you around the SEC, looking at some other games, and we'll keep on reminding you to send us some tweets. Use the hashtag CTKO to interact with CTKO, and we'll try and address your questions or comments on the air. And when we come back, we're going to have a little fun in the Chick-fil-A Fan Zone. You hear a lot about the Ice Bucket Challenge. Well, we've got it going on right here inside the Georgia World Congress Center. That's when we come back to CTKO. Stay with us. You're looking at video of Alabama rolling into the ATL on Friday afternoon. The Crimson Tide, led by Nick Saban, had that look. All business. We're having fun, but they are here to win a football game. Speaking of having fun, we've heard all about the Ice Bucket Challenge. In fact, I did it live on the air a couple of weeks ago to support ALS. Tamara Allen from the Kevin Turner Foundation is with us, and the former Alabama fullback, NFL star with the Eagles and Patriots, afflicted with ALS, and it hits home for Alabama fans. You're doing some great work, and here today at the Chick-fil-A Fan Zone, you got a special setup that we're going to demonstrate in just a moment. But tell us what you got going here today.
Well, we just want to make sure that everybody has had an opportunity to do the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, so we decided to bring it here. So if you haven't done it, come on down. We are also releasing our Brain Not Bell campaign today. It's your brain, not a bell. So when somebody says they've got their bell rung, we need to remind them that it's their brain, and you're going to need it later. So that's really what we're trying to promote, ALS and brain injury awareness.
All right, Tamara, obviously nobody wants to get soaked before the game, so this is a watered-down version, if you will, of the Ice Bucket Challenge. But let's show them how it works. We got somebody ready to go. It's still cold, even if it's not a lot of ice. This is some great work. Again, tell people how they can go online and help out, not just ALS, but Kevin Turner specific.
Yes, please come find us at kevinturnerfoundation.org, kevinturnerfoundation.org.
All right, thank you so much, Tamara. All right, great work here. Fun, but at the same time, a good cause with the Kevin Turner Foundation. When we come back, we're going to take you around the SEC, including one big matchup that has conference implications right off the bat. More fun from the Chick-fil-A fan zone inside the Georgia World Congress Center. Crimson Tide Kickoff, presented by Alpha Insurance, rolls on right after this.
It's the main spot for some fun before the game. The Chick-fil-A fan zone inside the Georgia World Congress Center. Bama and West Virginia fans are friendly now. We'll see if that's still the case right around kickoff. The kickoff rolled around in a big way Thursday in Columbia, South Carolina. The debut of Kenny Hill as quarterback for Texas A&M against South Carolina. And I tell you what, he's got some people in Aggie land saying, Johnny who? Johnny football was awesome, but so is Kenny Hill. 511 yards. That broke Manziel's single game record. And A&M stunned South Carolina 52-28. They ran 99 plays from the line of scrimmage. Ole Miss took on Boise State in the Dome on Thursday night in the first Chick-fil-A kickoff game of the week. They were a little slow to get started. Bo Wallace had problems with 3 picks in the first half, but they got it straightened out, and Ole Miss went on to notch the victory 35-13. A full slate of SEC games this Saturday. Only 2 teams besides A&M and South Carolina, though, kicking it off against each other. And that, BJ, is Auburn and Arkansas.
Yeah, you know, the defending SEC champs, we often kind of forget, hey, Auburn won the SEC title even though they lost in the championship game. Some of us haven't forgotten, but Auburn trying to prove that they're not just a fluke. And, you know, one of the ways they can do that is getting a big win over Arkansas. And they'll have to do it without Nick Marshall, at least early in this game. He's a Heisman candidate. Gus Malzahn, though, sitting him as a disciplinary measure. Instead, it's going to be Jeremy Johnson who's going to get the start. Malzahn seemed very comfortable with his sophomore quarterback.
We have a lot of confidence in him to run our entire offense. And like I said before, he's very talented. I mean, the 2 games he played last year, he was the freshman SEC Offensive Player of the Week.
The LSU Tigers start the season, speaking of Tigers, with relatively low expectations by their standards. Les Miles can sympathize with Nick Saban. He, too, is undecided on a starting quarterback. It'll either be sophomore Anthony Jennings or freshman Brandon Harris. Miles says it has not been an easy process finding a starter.
We have talented quarterbacks. We have guys that, you know, can play, but right now they've not separated themselves, and we're not certain. If we were certain, you know, I promise you, we'd play the one guy that would give us all the advantage. But if 2 guys can give us greater advantage than one guy, then let's certainly play 2.
I'm sorry, BJ.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Hey, I just love talking, don't I?
That's all right. Another high-profile non-conference clash. Clemson visiting Athens and the 12th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Mark Richt also replacing a signal caller. Aaron Murray, he was pretty good. He's gone. Part of experience facing Dabo Swinney's Tigers will be learning about his young team.
Everybody wants to win game 1. Everybody wants to have a positive start to the season. We're going to learn a lot of things this game, whether we win it or lose it, but it's more fun to correct mistakes after a victory than a loss. So the goal is to win the game, and we've done everything we feel like we could do between the beginning of camp and now to get ready for that.
Here's a look at the rest of the conference schedule on this opening Saturday. All the times you see there on your screen are Central Time, so it is a big day of action, and it is back. SEC football in style. Well, much more to come here on Crimson Tide Kickoff. Alabama may not have a lot of history with West Virginia. In fact, they don't have any, but Nick Saban certainly does. He addresses his childhood love of the Mountaineers.
Exactly, and I'm going to express a love of mine, and that's eating. We had some good food here in Atlanta. One of the best burgers I ever had. More milliseconds is coming up in just a minute.
We'll also get a peek behind enemy lines, a feature that's back for this year. A West Virginia television station gives us a special look at the Mountaineers. CTKO live from Atlanta continues when we return here on Alabama's home team, WVUA TV.
Here with Tamara. Tamara, you work at the Vortex Bar and Grill. This is a kind of cool place to come and hang out if you're, say, an Alabama fan, a West Virginia fan before the game. Would you recommend this for just anyone?
I mean, if you're easily offended, I wouldn't recommend it for you. If you're pretty awesome and easygoing and you like rock and roll and beer and stuff and burgers, then yeah, you should come in. You know, fun things.
All right, we're here with some people at the Vortex. Just looked like cleaned off a hamburger, half a hamburger left. How's the food here? Is it pretty good?
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. Flew all the way in from Houston, Texas just to get a hamburger.
There you go. Was it worth the flight?
Absolutely. I'll be back.
Tell me about the burgers. Burgers are fun. That's one of the many things you mentioned that are awesome in that litany of things that you just described to me. But specifically burgers. Let's talk about your favorite burger. What's a burger that a girl like you might like?
Ooh.
Especially from here.
The Big Bad Voodoo. So it's got pepper jelly from New Orleans that's been blessed by a voodoo priestess. It's also delicious, but it's also been blessed. A chipotle cream cheese and bacon on buttered Texas toast. So it's sticky, eggy, gooey, sweet, savory, delicious. You need wet naps after that one.
Just the regular Vortex burger with jack cheese and medium well with tater tots. Awesome.
Does the Vortex kind of become different at night? What happens at night?
So you get the suits during the day. It's a lunch. It's more of like a restaurant during the day. And at nighttime, it transforms into the bar, the Vortex bar, mostly. More partying, more drinking. All of us are wearing a lot less clothing to serve.
Okay.
It gets wild at night.
Hey, if you're looking for a great place to eat, and especially if you want to get the best burger in Atlanta, come to the Vortex Bar and Grill. But whatever you do, leave the kids at home.
So Alabama and West Virginia are meeting for the first time on the football field, but the head coach of the Crimson Tide certainly knows a lot about the Mountaineers. Nick Saban grew up in Fairmont, West Virginia, and he was a huge West Virginia fan growing up, but he makes it clear now his loyalties are to the Crimson Tide.
That was the biggest thing in going when I was a kid, man, to go to Mountaineer Field and watch West Virginia play. That was like the highlight of, you know, my year. I remember listening to my little brown transistor radio. Darrell Emhoff hit a jump shot to end the game in 1960, I think it was, to win 71-70 in a national championship game when Jerry West played. You don't forget stuff like that. But now I'm Alabama's coach, so, you know, I'm an Alabama fan.
You know, the Georgia Dome has been like a home away from home for the Crimson Tide. Alabama played here just last year, beating Virginia Tech, and they've had great success in domes overall. 15-6-1 in domes, 6-3 all-time in the Georgia Dome. Well, each and every week this football season on CTKO, we're going to try and give you a special peek inside the opposition. We go right to the source to do this. Our media friends from WDTV in Bridgeport, West Virginia, bring us this week's installment of Behind Enemy Lines.
Taking you where everyone else is too scared to go. Get ready to go behind enemy lines.
Greetings, I'm Joe Mercado from WDTV, the CBS affiliate in Clarksburg, West Virginia. For the first time in a decade, the Mountaineers are coming off a losing season. A 4-8 record did not sit very well here in the Mountain State because he ran through 3 different starting quarterbacks in the first 5 games. Well, Holgorsen ended any QB controversy in June by announcing that senior Clint Trickett would be his starter. Trickett started 7 of the last 8 games in 2013 while playing through a shoulder injury that required off-season surgery. On the other side of the ball, Tony Gibson has been promoted to defensive coordinator. That unit made some strides last year, although they did allow over 33 points per game. They will be without a projected starter at corner in Ishmael Banks for the first 3 games of the season. He is sidelined with an academic issue. The Mountaineers, well aware of their status as a 4-touchdown underdog for today, that is not an unfamiliar position.
It doesn't affect our coaching style whatsoever. It doesn't affect our preparation whatsoever. We don't pay attention to it. It's not something that affects us one way or another. I think I'd be naive to say that our players don't at least look at it. They probably do a little bit, but in a game like this, first game, everybody's excited to play. It doesn't matter what the matchup is. It doesn't matter where you're playing it. Everybody's going to be excited and anxious to be able to get out there for the first time.
West Virginia playing in the Georgia Dome today for the first time since 2006 when they defeated Georgia in the Sugar Bowl 38-35. For Crimson Tide Kickoff, I'm Joe Mercado.
Thank you, Joe. Great stuff from there in West Virginia. We appreciate it. Well, the countdown to kickoff is on here in Atlanta. When we come back, we'll welcome in another special guest to the program. And as you can see, the West Virginia fans are fired up. CTKO rolls on live from Atlanta, Georgia. Stay with us. And we're back here on Crimson Tide Kickoff. The Chick-fil-A fan zone is rocking. West Virginia going to be walking through here in just a little bit. And we're joined now by a very special guest. Speaking of the Chick-fil-A kickoff game, Gary Stokan, President and CEO of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl and these games. And now the Hall of Fame. Not like there wasn't enough already to do in Atlanta. Thanks, Gary, for joining us.
Gary, great to be with you.
But this College Football Hall of Fame is unbelievable. BJ had a special piece on it already.
Great.
I mean, visually, it's just thrilling, and it really does tell the history of college football, but entertain you at the same time.
Well, and that's what we went for. We went to 11 different museums around the country, and when we met with the exhibit designer, we told him, I termed the phrase edutainmuseum.
Wow.
It's not on Wikipedia yet, but it should be.
It's coming.
It's educational, entertaining, and a museum, and that's what we had to build. That's right. That's what we had to build, and interactivity, connection to you as an Alabama fan, but also a college football fan. It connects you back to your laptop when you get home, so that stay in touch with the Hall of Fame. And we really feel like that puts us over the top to be the college football capital. Between the kickoff games, the Hall of Fame, the enshrinement ceremony, the SEC championship game, and now the college football playoff with the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl.
College football fans love South Bend, Indiana. We know it's a great city, home of the Fighting Irish, but for Atlanta, it's an opportunity, but it's also an opportunity for the College Football Hall of Fame to be seen by, a 500,000 people or so a year.
That's exactly right. We did 2 throughput analysis done. They had about 500,000, so we built the pro forma based on that, as well as building the space to hold that. And we think that we'll probably do, upwards of beyond that the first couple of years, and then it'll settle in about that number. But that's being a convention town. It really helps, which South Bend really wasn't.
Chick-fil-A kickoff game's been such a success. One just wasn't enough. We've got 2 now, and you anticipate maybe going to 3 at some point?
Well, we talked about it when we opened the new $1.2 billion stadium, maybe doing a Thursday, Saturday, and Monday. I think we'd like to do a Saturday, Monday, and maybe do 2 games. Thursdays are hard. We learned, it's tough travel for people. They got to take a couple days off. And Saturday, it's just, as you can tell, this is what it's all about. It's an electric atmosphere with Alabama and West Virginia, and we're so excited to have Alabama back. Nick Saban, and he's been so good to us. We hope to have him back again.
I said earlier it's a second home for Alabama. 30 seconds, Gary, but the Peach Bowl is great tradition here in the city of Atlanta. Now Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Peach Bowl's back in the name.
Right.
And I think that means a lot to the people, not just in this state, but in the South.
Well, I appreciate that. We went back to our tradition, and we'll be the first college football playoff game ever in history at 1 o'clock on December 31st.
Right.
We'll kick off. So we're really looking forward to that. And we just think that this is such a great area for college football. So whether it's the Hall of Fame, the kickoff games, the bowl game, the SEC, we've got it all.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for being here.
And that's going to do it for Crimson Tide Kickoff. Thanks to our sponsor, Alpha Insurance, as well as our other sponsors. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you again next week on CTKO.